PD 532, the Anti-Piracy and Highway Robbery of 1974. This is an old law, but then it is still significant. Now you have there the definition for Philippine waters. Why is this important? Because if we compare it in the piracy as provided under the RPC, it is referring only to the high seas. And with PD 532, piracy can be committed in Philippine waters. So if you notice, the definition here for Philippine waters is the same as that you can found in the Philippine Constitution. So in the Philippine Archipelago, in the territory definition, so it refers to all bodies of water, such as, but not limited to, seas, gulf, bays, around, between, and connecting each of the islands of the Philippine Archipelago, irrespective of its depth, breadth, length, or dimension, and all other waters belonging to the Philippines by historic or legal title, including territorial sea, the seabed, the insular shelves, and other submarine areas over which the Philippines have sovereignty or jurisdiction. Basically, the purpose of highlighting on what Philippine water means is on the enforceability of PD 532. Remember on the territorial characteristics of criminal law, that it is enforceable only within the Philippine territory, hence the definition for Philippine waters. Definition of vessel is likewise important because if the subject of the taking is not the vessel contemplated under PD 532, then you cannot sue that person under PD 532. So what is the vessel contemplated under PD 532? Any vessel or watercraft used for transport of passengers and cargo from one place to another through Philippine waters. It shall include all kinds and types of vessels or boats used in fishing. So you have the, what else? Pump boat. So what else can you think as an example so that you can apply vessel? A jet ski, probably. Yacht, yes.
Vintas.
Vintas, ibalangay or barangay, the old one that is used by our forefathers. So those are included because it says here, used to transport passengers and cargo from one place to another. You are raising your hand, Attorney Divina Gracia.
Yes, Judge. Sorry to interrupt. I was just confused. Part A with which is the Philippine waters. I guess it is. If I'm not mistaken, it's in reference to the Philippine territory. However, there's one phrase there that siguro nakapabother na ko slide ba, which is the by historic or legal title. Understanding the history, Judge, since PD man siya, it was crafted during the Marcos administration. But however, Judge, sa current nato nga constitution, di ba the phrase by historic or legal title was removed already. So how do we how do I say this? How do we reconcile this with the current constitution, Judge?
So if it is omitted, it doesn't mean that, for example, our claim like the West Philippine Sea, we may say it's true historic, but now it's no more historic. So mura lang siya og na-upgrade, di ba? Those old definition under historic title, under the law, we have now that legal title over those. So you don't need to be bothered by the phrase historic or legal title.
Okay, Judge. Noted. Thank you.
Okay. So what is piracy? Any attack upon or seizure of any vessel, or taking away of the whole or part thereof, or its cargo, equipment, or the personal belongings of each complement or passenger, irrespective of the value thereof. So take note, there is the attack of the vessel, that is one act. There could be taking of the vessel or part thereof only, or taking of equipment, cargo, or personal belonging, irrespective of ownership. And how is the taking done? By means of violence against or intimidation of persons or force upon things. In other words, this is the same as that for robbery, okay? Forcible taking. Who can be made liable or who are the offenders? Committed by any person, including a passenger or member of the complement of said vessel, where the same is committed in Philippine waters, shall be considered as piracy under PD 532. The offender shall be considered as pirates and punished as hereinafter provided. So here are the penalties. Reclusion temporal in its medium and maximum periods. I think this is one of the disqualification under ISL. Is it ISL? Yes, I think ISL. So despite the fact that it is only reclusion temporal, but piracy is one of the enumeration wherein ISL shall not be made applicable. If physical injuries or other crimes are committed as a result or on occasion thereof, the penalty shall be reclusion perpetua. If rape, murder, or homicide is committed as a result or on occasion of piracy, or when the offenders abandon the victims without means of saving themselves, or when the seizure is accomplished by firing upon or boarding the vessel, the mandatory penalty of death shall be imposed. So you know that we have the suspension for the imposition of the death penalty. The enumeration under the last paragraph actually qualifies piracy, wherein the maximum penalty shall be imposed upon the offenders. Aiding pirates or highway robbers or brigands or abetting piracy or highway I forgot. I think there is lacking in the slides. Take note, this is anti-piracy and highway robbery. I hope I had a slides. Let's see. Okay. So the PD 532 or the anti-highway robbery, the robbery there is done in the highway, and it must be an indiscriminate robbery. Okay, indiscriminate, meaning to say it is committed in the highway against anyone, not predetermined. And the purpose of the accused there is really to rob in the highways, hence highway robbery. Any person who knowingly or in any manner aids or protects pirates or highway robbers or brigands, highway robbers or brigands or brigandage, that is synonymously used, such as giving them information about the movement of the police or other peace officers of the government, or acquires or receives property taken by such pirates or brigands, or in any manner derives any benefit therefrom. So if you notice, this is an act of an accessory. Or any person who directly or indirectly abets the commission of piracy or highway robbery or brigandage shall be considered as an accomplice, while their act may be considered as an act of an accessory under the RPC, but under PD 532, they are considered to be an accomplice. Okay, they are accomplice, not as an accessory. So what would be the penalty being the accomplice? 1 degree lower as that of the principal. It shall be presumed that any person who does any of the acts provided shall perform them knowingly. Okay, presumption of knowledge. It is incumbent upon the accused to prove otherwise. In PD 532, the pirates include the crew members or passengers. Take note, in 532, crew members or passengers, if you are having piracy under the RPC, these crew members and passengers cannot be made liable for piracy, but for mutiny. But in 532, they can be made liable for piracy under 532. Because in RPC, the offender there must be a stranger to the vessel. But here in 532, anyone, including crew members and passengers. The vessel includes all kinds and types of vessels or boats used in fishing, such as bangka or raft. Hence, when robbery is committed in a bangka or raft in Philippine waters, it is piracy. Situs or place of commission, Philippine waters. Because in the RPC, it shall include high seas. Abettors, they are accomplices, they are not just mere accessory. So here are the further distinction between Article 122 of the RPC from PD 532. So in RPC, any person in case of attack or on seizure of the vessel, not crew members or passengers, and in case of seizure or haul or repart, equipment or personal belongings. So that is under RPC. But in 532, it includes crew members and passengers. So to reiterate, one common denominator, any person. But in RPC, not crew members or passengers, they are excluded. But in 532, they are included. Situs or place of commission. In RPC, Philippine waters and high seas, while in 532, Philippine waters only. As to abettors, in RPC, they are considered to be accessories. In 532, they are accomplices. So how is piracy committed, especially if qualifying circumstances are present? So under the RPC, piracy there is qualified by seizing a vessel by boarding or firing upon it. In 532, the same, common, firing, seizing by firing, or boarding a vessel. In RPC, abandoning victims without means of saving would be qualifying. Same with 532. The remedyo sa number 3, accompanied by murder, homicide, physical injuries, or rape. And here, what it says here, it's not limited to murder, homicide, physical injuries, or rape because in 532, it includes other crimes as a result or on the occasion of piracy. Now, by the way, I think it was asked in the mock bar, let us say that A and B are passengers of the same vessel or the same boat. Let's say going to Mindanao or going to Manila, for example. A took the rest watch of B. Could A be made liable for piracy? Would that be piracy? Now, take note, the facts of the problem did not say any force, violence, or intimidation. So it's clear, it could only be theft, but not piracy. But what if there was struggle between A and B? Would now it be sort of piracy because of the force or intimidation between A and B? Will you consider it as piracy? I think still it falls short to make him liable under 532. Of course, there is no vessel. How about personal belonging? Because it says their personal belonging. So how would you analyze it? Would it now be considered as piracy? Because in 532, it says there, any person, including crew members or passenger. And you have there, or the personal belongings of each complement or passengers, irrespective of the value, by means of violence against or intimidation of person or force upon things. Would you consider a pirate? If you are confronted with that kind of question, take note of the elements. In piracy under PD 532, it's any attack upon or seizure of any vessel, taking away the whole or part of its cargo, equipment, or the personal belongings. Highlight personal belongings of its past complement or passenger. Highlight passenger based on the problem that we are confronted to. Irrespective of the value by means of violence against, di ba, na ay struggle between the two of them, you highlight it. It is committed in Philippine waters. I think the examiner will be convinced that indeed you understand what you are answering because the elements are there. Okay, the elements are there. Okay, so other possible questions on piracy, you have the definition for piracy under 532. Make sure you can distinguish it under RPC. Because usually, you will be given a problem. And then the question would be, what crime was committed? So meaning to say, you must know the elements of the crime so that you can distinguish piracy under RPC and piracy under PD 532. Okay, I have given you the distinction so that you will know the elements of each of the crime so that you can identify correctly what was the crime committed by the person. And then what constitutes piracy? I would suggest you would make a bullet form on your notes as far as any other laws for that matter. You can have it bullet, make your own notes. If you make your own notes, it's actually easy to remember. In fact, if you will recall, you can even recall what color of the pen that you use in making the notes. This would be your visual aids in studying and recall there is much higher than just mere reading. And then vessel involved. Take note on what vessel involved and then on the jurisdiction. So CITOS in 532, limited in Philippine waters. Okay, so that's all for PD 532. Those are the most important portions there. So let's proceed with the next or any question. Okay, corollary to the attack of a vessel, we have here RA 6235 if what has been attacked is an airplane or an aircraft. So you have there the anti-hijacking law. Section 1 provides the acts punished under the anti-hijacking law. Compelling the pilot of an aircraft of Philippine registry to change course or destination or otherwise usurping or seizing control while it is in flight. Now take note that under the first paragraph of Section 1, the aircraft we are referring to here is an aircraft of Philippine registry. What determines the registration of an aircraft? Would it be the nationality of the owner or its registration? So it would be the registration irrespective of the nationality of the owner. What are the acts done to constitute anti-hijacking? Change course or destination or usurping or seizing its control. Further qualification while it is in flight. As in the bar, when is an aircraft deemed in flight? An aircraft is in flight when all the external doors thereof are closed following embarkation until the same is opened for disembarkation. The moment the external door is closed, it is already considered to be in flight, even if it has not taken off. It is also still considered to be in flight the moment it landed to the runway, it proceeded with taxiing to the proper boarding bay to which you will unload the cargoes and the passenger. That would still be considered in flight for as long as the external door is not yet open for disembarkation. That is in flight. You are liable for anti-hijacking if the aircraft Philippine registry is in flight. If it is not in flight, if you enter therein, you usurp the control, but it is not in flight, then the law does not apply to you because the element of in flight is wanting. Now, how about if the aircraft is of foreign registry? Compelling an aircraft of foreign registry to land in any part of the Philippine territory or usurping or seizing control of such while it is within Philippine territory. It is considered to be a violation under the anti-hijacking law. There is no requirement that it be in flight. Okay? It is not required that it be in flight. For as long as it is in the Philippine territory, then the law is applicable. The following are the qualifying circumstances for acts mentioned in paragraph 1 and 2 of section 1. Firing upon the pilot, crew, or passenger, exploding or attempting to explode any bomb or explosive to destroy the aircraft, or the crime is accompanied by murder, homicide, serious physical injury, or rape. So what is its consequence? The maximum penalty shall be imposed. Another punishable act, carrying or loading on board a passenger aircraft operating as a public utility in the Philippines, substances which are corrosive, flammable, explosive, or poisonous. Take note that the mere carrying or loading of these articles are already punishable under the law. So you have there the definition for explosive. Any substance, either solid or liquid, or single compound by which chemical reaction liberates an explosion shall include but not limited to dynamites, firecrackers, blasting caps, black powders, bursters, percussions, cartridges, and other explosive materials, except bullets for firearms. Flammable is defined as any substance or material that is highly combustible and self-igniting by chemical reaction and shall include but not limited to acrolein, alin, aluminum, ammonium mixtures, and other similar substances. Now, how about a corrosive substance? Any substance or material, either liquid, solid, or gaseous material, which through chemical reaction wears away, impairs, or consumes any object. So it's corrosive. And then you have there the definition for poisonous. any substance or material except medicinal drug. Okay, except medicinal drug. So those are the definition of the 4 substances that are prohibited from being loaded in a public utility aircraft. Shipping or loading such substances on a cargo aircraft operating as public utility in the Philippines in a manner not in accordance with the ATO rules. And then you have there, if it is committed with death, injury, or damage to property, so it has to be filed separately. Section 7 provide that for any death or injury to persons or damage to property resulting from violation of Section 3 and 4, may be held liable in accordance with the applicable provisions of the RPC, no absorption. Okay, no absorption, meaning to say, they should be filed separately without violating the rights of the accused against double jeopardy. So I have here a slide on the kinds of aircraft. So if the aircraft is of Philippine registry, to constitute a violation of this act, it must be in flight. If it is of foreign registry, it need not be in flight. If it is a public utility passenger aircraft, the mere carrying of the prohibited substance, the corrosive, flammable, the 4 kinds, so that is already punishable under the law. And then if it is a cargo aircraft, non-compliance of the ATA rules constitutes a violation of this act. So meaning to say, the act of the accused would also matter as far as what type of aircraft he is into to make the law applicable. So possible questions, when is an aircraft deemed in flight? And then familiarize yourself on the Act Spanish as well as the kinds of aircraft. Now, when shall it be considered terrorism? Remember on the Colatilia, when shall this be an act considered to be an act of terrorism? When it creates a widespread and extraordinary fear and panic among the populace. So committing anti-hijacking, and it involves a widespread and it spread widespread extraordinary fear and panic among the populace in order for the government to give in to their unlawful demands, then it shall now be, he would also be considered to be a terrorist. So he will be filed separately with terrorism as well. Okay, so any question on the anti-hijacking law? So those are the salient provisions that you need to remember under the anti-hijacking. So let's proceed with anti-arson. Now, what I am showing to you is PD 1613. Anti-arson, but this is simply called simple arson. Simple as compared to the heinous one, which you can find under Article 320 of the RPC. So what is arson in the first place? Malicious destruction of property by fire, meaning to say, there is intention, there is malice on destroying a property by means of fire. The accused, either another person or the owner himself of the property subject of the fire. So, who can be held liable? Any person who burns or sets fire to the property of another shall be punished by prisión mayor. So, if you notice, the penalty is low, because as what I have mentioned earlier, we are dealing with simple arson. Same penalty shall be imposed when a person sets fire to his own property under circumstances which expose to danger the life or property of another. Take note of the phrase, which expose to danger the life or property of another. In other words, you can set fire on property. In fact, pwede magdaog. But the moment it would expose to danger the life or property of another, then you can be made liable under PD 1613. Simple because the damage that it may cause is not that grave, as compared to the heinous one, destructive arson, as provided under Article 320 of the RPC. So you have there destructive arson under 320 as amended by RA 7659. 7659, so this is the law that enumerates on what constitutes heinous crime, wherein the penalty of reclusion perpetua to death shall be imposed upon the accused. As compared to earlier, it's only prisión mayor. So just go over on what constitutes or what is included in Article 320. And then you have there the definition. So if you, continuation. So if you notice, it involves the public already as compared to the second portion wherein it would only, you would only be made liable for arson if you put to danger the life of or property of another. So meaning to say, if you set your property, your own property to fire and then naakasabungtod, ikaw ra nag-inusara dito, why manghilabot nimo, di ba? So irrespective of the application of the above enumerated qualifying circumstances, the penalty of reclusion perpetua to death shall likewise be imposed when the arson is perpetrated or committed by two or more persons or by a group of persons, regardless of whether their purpose is merely to burn or destroy a building, or the burning merely constitutes an overt act in the commission of another violation of the law. This is still a continuation of destructive arson, wherein the penalty for reclusion perpetua to death shall be imposed. So if the subject of the burning could be an arsenal, shipyard, storehouse, or military power of fireworks factory, ordnance, storehouse, archives, or general museum of the government. And then you have there, in an inhabited place, any storehouse or factory of inflammable or explosive materials, if as a consequence of the commission of any of the acts, death results. Now, take note that there is no proof that the principal intent of the accused is to kill a person. Remember in Article 14, one of the aggravating circumstances, and in the definition of murder, which you will have later on, killing a person by means of fire is murder. So how do you distinguish it now if there is a fire and in the course of the fire, someone dies? If you have no evidence that the principal intent of the accused is to kill that person, then the crime is arson. But if the principal intent of the accused is to kill a person and he uses fire to kill that person, then the crime shall be murder. Another scenario, if the principal intent of the person is really to kill, either he killed it with treachery or there was a fight between the two of them, so it was homicide, and as a way to conceal the crime he committed, he burned the house to which it includes the victim. So what crime is committed? Separate crimes of murder or homicide and arson. Because the arson there was used to conceal the other crime. The arson there, the fire there was not used to kill the person. It was only used to conceal. So separate information for arson and murder or homicide as the case may be. Okay, so I hope you were able to follow the distinction so that you can answer properly if you will be asked what crime was committed by the accused. Okay, so I have there a table distinguishing destructive arson from simple arson. So if it is destructive arson, the law governs is Article 320 of the RPC. Simple arson, PD 1613. Destructive arson characterized as heinous, while in simple arson, not heinous. There is lesser degree of perversity and viciousness or less significant to social, economic, political, and national security implications. Hence, the penalty is only prison mayor. Unlike in destructive arson, it is so grievous, it's so odious, unhelpful, vicious, atrocity, outrageous, and perversity on the part of the accused. Hence, the penalty shall be reclusion perpetua to death. We have there the so-called other cases of arson, wherein the penalty of reclusion temporal to reclusion perpetua shall be imposed. If what is being burned is any building used as office of the government or any of its agencies, reclusion temporal to reclusion perpetua shall be imposed. Now, take note, this any building could be private or public building. But as far as private building is concerned, it must be used as an office of the government or any of its agency. Second, any inhabited house or dwelling. Third, industrial establishment, shipyard, oil well, or mine shaft, platform, or tunnel. Any plantation, farm, pasture land, growing crop, grain field, orchard, bamboo grove, or forest. Any rice mill, sugar mill, cane mill, or mill central, or any railway or bus station, airport, wharf, or warehouse. What aggravates arson? So these are special aggravating. So the maximum penalty shall be imposed if the same was committed with intent to gain. If it is committed, so the maximum penalty shall be imposed if the same was committed with intent to gain. If it is committed for the benefit of another, meaning to say a person was hired to do it for himself, to do it for the interest of another person. If the offender is motivated by spite, hatred towards the owner or occupant of the house or property burned. If it is committed by a syndicate, it is considered to be committed by a syndicate if it is planned and carried out by a group of 3 or more persons. Okay, 3 or more. How about kung 2 lang? They conspire with each other, but you cannot consider them to be a syndicate because to be a syndicate, it must be committed by at least 3. Where death results, so if by reason or on occasion of the arson, death results, reclusion perpetua to death shall be imposed. So this one, I already mentioned this earlier, and in fact, I've also mentioned about separate filing of murder or homicide and arson as the case may be. These are instances where arson is committed. Prima facie evidence. So when we say prima facie evidence, if unrefuted, is sufficient to convict the accused beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay? Sufficient to convict him beyond reasonable doubt. If the fire started simultaneously in more than one part of the building or establishment. So by that alone, we can say that it is not accidental, it is intentional because it would be impossible for a fire to start simultaneously in more than one part of the building. Na ay sa ground floor, na ay sa third floor, so it must be intentional. So that constitutes prima facie evidence of arson. Next, if substantial amount of flammable substances or materials are stored within the building, and the same is not necessary in the business of the offender nor for household use. So prima facie evidence. So if you are a department store or a grocery at that, so why are you storing gasoline in the premises? Same with the household. Hence, that constitutes prima facie evidence of arson. If gasoline, kerosene, petroleum, or other flammable or combustible substances or materials soaked therewith or containers thereof, or any mechanical, electrical, chemical, or electronic contrivance designed to start a fire, or ashes or traces of any of the foregoing are found in the ruins or premises of the born building or property. Now, if you notice, if a building is on fire, ato man ang pagmono. Thereafter, an investigation has to be done by the fire officers to rule out arson. So if you notice, sometimes they would say it is really an accident. It was not intentional. But if in the ruins, they can see these instances, kita baka diturog ka ng gasoline, manimaho man sad gyud na, di ba? And then there is that lighter. So this would actually confirm that the fire is actually arson. It was intentional or malicious. If the building or property is insured for substantially more than its actual value, another instance of arson. Because we can conclude that the purpose of the burning is to collect the insurance proceeds. If during the lifetime of the corresponding fire insurance policy, more than 2 fires have occurred in the same or other premises owned under the control of the offender or insured. Another instance wherein prima facie evidence of arson can be established. Sige, lagsunog, asyaro, di ba? If shortly before the fire, a substantial portion of the effects insured and stored in the building or property had been withdrawn from the premises except in the ordinary course of business. Okay, except in the ordinary course of business. So if you are a department store and it's already 11 or 12 midnight, why is it that there are trailer vans coming in and out of the premises? It could be that you are also saving some of the inventory that you have there in the department store before setting it on fire. So that is another prima facie evidence for arson. Next, if a demand for money or other valuable consideration was made before the fire in exchange for the desistance of the offender or for the safety of any person or property of the victim, sort of blackmailing. Okay, so you had been blackmailed, and then if you would not give in to their demand, you were threatened that your building will be on fire. So the threat that was done earlier or the demand for money shall be an evidence for arson. Conspiracy to commit arson shall be punished by prison mayor. So this is another exception that mere conspiracy is not punishable, diba? So exception, conspiracy to commit arson. Mere conspiracy is punishable. If the owner of the building cannot prove that he has no participation or knowledge of such arson, despite the exercise of due diligence, under Section 8, the building which is the subject of the arson, including the land, shall be confiscated and escheated to the state. Okay, so he has to prove otherwise. The burden of proof lies with the owner that indeed he has no knowledge or participation of the fire. Let's review a little on the stages of execution. When shall it be attempted arson? Frustrated? When shall it be consummated? A person intending to burn a wooden structure collects some rags, soaks them in gasoline, and places them beside the wooden wall of the building. When he is about to light a match to set fire the rags, he is discovered by another who chases him away. What crime is committed? Take note, he is not yet able to set fire. But why do we say attempted? Because remember on the stage, on the subjective phase, he already passed through the subjective phase. It's already on the objective phase in the commission of the crime. There is no other way that this person is attempting to commit arson because he already soaks the rags, placed it near the wall, and he is about to fire. It would have been different if he was caught buying a gallon of gasoline, because it could be done, or it could be used for a lawful purpose. So at that stage, it is still subjective. You cannot charge him for attempted arson, too early, premature. But here, he soak already the rag with the gasoline, place it near the wooden structure. Unsaon man to niya, ano yan man itong gisok o gasoline ang rag, di ba? Manglabas siya sa rag with the use of gasoline. Lahi sad. Okay? Next scenario. If that person is able to light or set fire to the rags, but the fire was put out before any part of the building was burned, then it is frustrated. Okay? No part of the building is yet set on fire. Pero, nakapasiga na siya sa rag. But if before the fire was put out, it had burned a part of the building, it is already considered to be consummated. Another scenario. Now take note, the illustration that we have, it was done outside. But if you did it inside the building, inside the structure, nakapasiga na ka, even if no portion of the house was burned, ang katulang rag nasiga, napalong because you have there a fire extinguisher, for example, the crime would be consummated arson already because the fire was inside the structure or building. So, based on jurisprudence, any charring of the wood of a building whereby the fiber of the wood is destroyed, consummated arson. However, the mere fact that a building is scorched or discolored by heat is not sufficient to constitute consummated arson. Setting fire to the contents of a building, so this is the one I'm saying earlier, constitutes consummated arson, okay? contents of a building inside the building. So that is consummated arson even if no part of the building was burned. So that ends PD 1613. Any question on simple arson? Okay, so your quiz earlier constitutes as well your attendance for today. And I think you still have there 30 minutes for your own disposal. Okay, so prepare for another quiz next meeting. Based on 5 na no, I will ask few from the topics sa week 1. Kay kahibalo ko naglungot-lungot mo nga nung wa mo kakuha sa ISL o sa probation. Okay? So, maybe on the next question, mas clearer na. And then you can have it. Okay, so with that, I thank you for your time and see you next week.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge.
Judge.
Thank you,
Judge.
Judge. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge.